how is the deck for India then?
Yes.
Because, hitherto, at least the last 2 years, advanced economies, higher money, more demand,
yes,
supply chain snarls, India benefited.
Yes.
Can that unravel?
Yes. So you're exactly right. So, to be fair, 7% growth, as most people think India will grow, maybe a little bit less than 7%, is still a mark of great resilience for India in this economy. But that shouldn't mask over what we need to focus on. One is, as you pointed to, last year when we grew 8.7%, 3 percentage points of that came from exports. Right? Okay. A disproportionately large number came from exports because the global economy was rebounding very sharply. This year, with the growth slowdown, European recession, China middling, we won't get those export tailwinds. So the question is, where can the growth come from? The good news is that as COVID has receded, the non-tradable sector has begun to open up. We're seeing consumption slowly recover. The good news on the investment side is this twin balance sheet problem that plagued us for a decade is behind us. Right? That corporate debt to GDP is the lowest since 2005. NPAs are much lower. So there are lots of silver linings over here. But there has to be a fundamental recognition that in this world, with such a sharp global slowdown, with fiscal policy being forced to consolidate, with monetary policy normalizing, real rates were at minus 300, they will come down to 0 or modestly positive. That growth is at a premium, and growth may well the momentum of growth may well have to slow around the world, and therefore India may not escape that. I think what we have to hope to do is, within those constraints, continue with what the central government has been doing, which is focusing sharply on infrastructure spending. I do believe that if the center and states can push on the public investment handle within the larger fiscal envelope, that does create the conditions a year or 2 years out to crowd in private investment in those sectors. Because the problem for private investment today is not a balance sheet problem, it's a utilization problem. The utilization rates are still in the low 70s. So if the government can keep aggregate demand in infrastructure sectors strong, then there is a hope that at some point the baton will pass to private investment. But it is a constrained optimization because right now the focus has to be macroeconomic stability. As the RBI has said several times, focusing on stability now is the best way to reduce the growth sacrifice in the medium term. So for this year, I think it should be fiscal consolidation, monetary normalization, and in my view, perhaps using the rupee tactically to solve the external imbalances.
Can you elaborate a bit on that?
So again, what we're seeing, the current account deficit, because commodity prices have shot up so much, it used to be 1.5% for 6 years before the pandemic. India's current account was very timid. The quarter that passed, it was probably 3.5%. This quarter, it's probably tracking above 5%, and for the full year, it will be 4% of GDP. Now, no reason to panic because the RBI is sitting on a war chest of FX reserves. As I keep saying, reserves to imports are 9 months of coverage, very comfortable. Reserves to gross financing requirements looking ahead are 1.5 times, again, very comfortable. So this is not 2013. There is no panic here. The question is, how do you bring external imbalances down without extracting a high price on growth? Because there are 2 ways to bring the current account down. One is to slam the brakes on growth and to choke imports off. And we certainly don't want that. India is still recovering from the pandemic. We're still not back on our pre-pandemic path. We need to get back on that path. So we don't want to overly squeeze growth, which is why my prescription has been, let's use the real effective exchange rate. If the exchange rate were to depreciate in a calibrated manner, over time, research has found it helps exports. It will discourage imports and people will move towards domestic substitutes, and the current account will narrow. So you get the narrowing of the current account and you get it in a growth supportive manner because a weaker exchange rate is actually helping growth over time. Now, of course, easier said than done. This is much more of an art than a science. But for me, that needs to be the kind of division of labor, that the exchange rate is used in a calibrated manner to solve the current account issue. Monetary policy is normalized and front-loaded to solve the inflation issue. And fiscal policy within its constraints still uses capital expenditure to help growth.